That's a big question. In terms of my public and political life, it would have to be to take criticism seriously, but not personally. You know, learn from your critics, but because there are so many agendas associated with criticism in politics, you can't let it get you to give up or get discouraged or give in. You have to keep going, and I learned that as a child, and it served me very well throughout my public career.
Yes.
Hi, Marianne Marisal from Brazil. I'd like to know if you think that the women that are running this year are being treated better than you were, and also if you think that Donald Trump's election influenced other elections around the world, like Bolsonaro's election, for instance.
Well, I wrote a book about the election because I couldn't figure out what had happened, and so I called it What Happened. And I have a chapter about women in politics, and one of the points that I made is that because I was the only woman at that level running, everybody had all of their views, their prejudices, their expectations to just put onto one person. And I said that I hoped that more women would run so that it would be more normalized and there wouldn't be, the kind of talking dog syndrome. Oh my gosh, look at that. She's a woman, she can talk, she can run for office. So this time, thankfully, there were. There were a number of women who ran. Some of the same double standards are in play for the women who ran this time, both those who were in and those who are still in the competition. I think we've made some progress, but it's still a long way to go. Where women, women like men come in all shapes and sizes and hairstyles, and you should be able to be judged on your merits insofar as that is possible. So we're moving forward, but the destination is still some ways ahead. I do think that the campaign that he ran and the way that he has governed has certainly encouraged authoritarian leaders, has encouraged the kind of insult politics where you lift yourself up by picking out targets, other people, whether they be migrants or minorities or people of a different religion or a gay background, whatever, and people are very clearly following that model. And I think that's a very serious threat to democracy because our current president has a great deal of admiration for authoritarian leaders and feels really comfortable with those who are largely on the right, not exclusively, but largely on the right, who are exercising power in an unaccountable way. So I'm worried about that.
To ask to Mrs. Clinton if you may kindly share with us a comment on Mr. Weinstein being convicted and found guilty. And if I may, can you tell us which legacy would you like to be remembered for as a human being and as a politician? Thank you so much.
Well, I think that the jury's verdict really speaks for itself. And it is obviously something that people have looked at and followed because it was time for an accounting. And the jury clearly found that. With respect to my own legacy, I just, I'm not at the point in my life yet that I'm looking backwards. I'm still looking forwards. There is so much still to be done and to speak out about every single day. And so I'm not thinking about legacy. I'm thinking about, how do we get health care for every American? How do we deal with climate change? How do we retire, Donald Trump? Those are the kind of things that I spend my time thinking about.
I mean, one thing I really came to realize from interviewing Secretary Clinton for 7 days was, what's next? It's not, this is my legacy or this is where it stands. It's always what's next. What can I be doing to make things happen to, improve our country?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Stephen Schaefer, Boston Herald. Mrs. Clinton, I wondered when you look back at your life in a 4-part series like this, what's your dominant mood or reaction to it all? And do you think the Democrats are really going to nominate a socialist to be their presidential candidate?
Well, first of all, when I look at this 4-hour series, I'm really amazed and very impressed at how Nanette took all this material and turned it into a compelling film. And it's not just about my life, it's about the arc of women's lives, it's about our politics, it's about all of the challenges that any person faces in a lifetime. So I am grateful. I guess if there were one word, it would be grateful that I've had the life that I've had, and that it has been portrayed in such an effective, moving way. So that would be my answer to that. And I'm going to wait and see who we nominate. I will support the nominee, and it won't surprise you to hear me say that I think that it's imperative that we retire the incumbent. First of all, on the debates, I've won all 3 debates. And I won 3 debates that were not as influential as debates used to be. And part of that was because of the environment in which the debates took place, and also what happened after the debates ended. And the kind of intervention in the campaign through WikiLeaks, through Russian disinformation, through Director Comey's behavior, that really were determinative in the outcome. So I think there's a couple of problems with debates at this moment in our political life, because they have to actually ask tough questions and demand answers. And that was hard to do with my opponent at that time. And so I don't know what's going to happen in this upcoming election. I don't even know whether he will debate. So we've got a lot of unanswered questions up ahead. Look, I have a personal opinion about the behavior of Mr. Assange. He is currently in court in London as to whether he will be extradited to the United States, so I'm not going to comment any further. It's now in a legal process, and the legal process will have to play out. And my point in what you just referenced as to what I said in the documentary is that, guess what? I'm a human being. And like all human beings, I have strengths and weaknesses. I have, views and feelings. And I think that because I burst onto the scene at a time when there weren't very many women at all, vying for the highest position in our political system, I engendered a lot of reaction. Some of it very personal to me, and look, in a democracy you can vote for somebody based on anything, right? And I respect that. That's the voter's choice. But a lot of it was a deliberate effort to mischaracterize me and create a view of me that I never thought was rooted in reality. And so, for example, when I think about leaving the Secretary of State's office after having served President Obama, I was incredibly popular. I had a very high approval rating, 69% or something, right? And my political opposition knew that they had to take me down, and they did a very good job and raised all kinds of phony issues, exaggerated issues, And I have said, you know, in the past that, you know, I don't think I did as good a job trying to respond to that onslaught of negativity. So I do think to some extent it was misunderstanding or misinformation, but I will also add this point. I don't think Vladimir Putin misunderstood me, okay? I think he knew exactly who I was and what I would do to stand up for freedom and decency and to create a strong relationship among Western democracies, particularly across the Atlantic, to defend Europe, to defend NATO. He knew exactly who I was. So when he ordered his intelligence service to go after me and say anything negative they could possibly say, and we have intercepts of quotes from the generals to their operatives in the intelligence agencies, to do just that, it wasn't because he was fooled or didn't understand me, it was because he wanted to defeat me. So I think that there are many different layers to this. As I said in the beginning, you don't have to like anybody in politics, you know? You have your perfect right. You don't have to agree with anybody. You can disagree with people on policies. But we are at a stage right now where we better get clear in democracies like yours and mine that it's the people of our country choosing our leaders, not foreign intervention or disinformation on social media and propaganda and stolen materials, as has happened in your Bundestag and elsewhere. Because we could still go whatever political direction we choose, but it should be our choice. And that means we've got to face squarely what has happened and is still happening in our country and elsewhere when it comes to democratic governance.
Ja, aber ich wollte nicht nur vor der Kamera.